I've learned Angular in 6 hours, and I've been able to build a complete login system from scratch. When learning a new language, I try to map my current knowledge to the target language. It's easiest to map an existing knowledge than try to understand a new concept. But as I'm mainly a backend developer with Java and Python, making the switch to Angular, which is on the front-end side, can be challenging. Angular is not a language, it's a framework. It's based on JavaScript and TypeScript. The thing is, I've already been working a little bit with JavaScript and React. I've done some videos, but I've never worked professionally on it. And TypeScript, it's absolutely new for me. The best way to learn a new tool is with a goal. I want to create a front-end application with a home page, a login page, and a content page, only available after the login. I will try to do it using the best practices and recommended components by Angular. I will go as fast as I can, doing first what's easy. When something goes harder, I will leave it and commit back later. You know, taking a walk is the best inspiration source. So, where do I start? To start learning a new language or framework, I recommend 3 options: buying a book, videos, or websites or blogs. I want to go fast and not go too much into details, so the book is discarded. I can go to YouTube, type Learn Angular, and take the videos from the best creators. But I have a goal in mind. I prefer jump from topic to topic as I need. Navigating in the video is harder, also discarded. So I choose the website. Which one? Let's see the Angular homepage. Let's see if they have a Getting Started section. Okay, let's start here. This tutorial introduces you to the essentials of Angular. Okay, that's what I want. But I quickly see that TypeScript is mandatory. So let's take a look to TypeScript. TypeScript is JavaScript with syntax for types. TypeScript is a strongly typed programming language that builds on JavaScript, giving you a better tooling at any scale. What does that mean? Okay, that's a JavaScript file. Okay, the difference between the first screen and the last screen is the array type. I come from Java. I'm ready for a strongly typed language. Okay, let's go back to Angular. Let's continue. This is a tour to the example application. Let's see what's Angular first. The essentials, yes, that's what I'm looking for. Oh, I have here the 3 main components, which are the components, the templates, and the dependency injection. Seems easy. Let's look at what a component looks like. Components are the building blocks that compose an application. A component includes a TypeScript class with a component annotation, a component decorator, an HTML template, and styles. Okay, seems the same as the components in React. It's the behavior of the UI component, such as a form, a box, or a header. I have the annotation, the decorator, to identify the component with some metadata. Okay, and to use it... Okay, it's not the class name. Oh, it's the selector metadata. Okay, it's fine. And inside the metadata, I have the HTML. What about big components? This could be harder to read. Let's continue. Templates. Every component has an HTML template that declares how the component renders. Okay, my previous question is now answered. This time is not the HTML itself, but the name of the file which has the HTML. Here is an example, and this is another one. Okay, that's new for me. What are those square brackets? Angular also supports property bindings to help you set values for properties and attributes of HTML elements and pass values to your application's presentation logic. Okay, it's to link the variable's values to the HTML. Notice the use of the square brackets. That syntax indicates that you are binding the property or attribute to a value in the component class. Okay, it's to set the ID of the paragraph to the value of the variable, say hello. And here I set the style of the paragraph from the value of the variable font color. And now I also have parentheses. Declare event listeners to listen for and respond to a user actions, such as keystrokes, mouse movements, clicks, and touches. You declare an event listener by specifying the event name in parentheses. Okay, those are just the events, the HTML events, the click, the submit, and more. Okay, for the events this time. So, where there is no parentheses nor square brackets, it's an HTML property. Okay, here's the complete example. The TypeScript file with all the variables and the method. And now the HTML. The method, it's called with the parentheses. It's binded to the click event. CanClick is a variable, false, which is binded to the disable property of the button. Say hello ID is a variable name, which is assigned to the ID of the paragraph, and same for the style color. I also have the font color, which is a variable surrounded by double brackets. Great, let's continue. Okay, I see here some Angular keywords, the ngIf, ng-for. I imagine that ng stands for Angular. Why the star? Maybe it's for reserved keywords for Angular. Let's see how it's used in the HTML. ngIf can edit, semicolon, else not edit. There is no ng-for. Okay, seems to be the if you can edit the following paragraph if can edit is true, else no edit. Can edit, it's a variable, no edit is not a variable. Okay, I set no edit, which is no. This is the ID of the other HTML element. So if I can edit, I display this div. If I cannot edit, I display the not edit element, which is this one. The following paragraph is read-only. Okay, I got it. But the code is in a string. It's a little bit confusing. Let's continue. Oh, dependency injection. This is familiar to me with Java and Spring. Dependency injection lets you declare dependencies of your TypeScript classes without taking care of their instantiation. Let's see the code. Logger is the service to be injected. To illustrate how dependency injection works, consider the following example. The first file, Logger, defines a logger class. This class contains a write count function that logs a number. This class seems to be the one I want to inject, but where do I inject it? This is the import. Okay, just in the constructor without a setter. Okay, let's continue scrolling. Okay, the CLI. I don't care for that now. And the libraries, I don't care neither. So, let's continue. I want to create my project. Let's go back to the get started. Take a tour to the example application. No, I want to create the application. So let's go to the setup. Setting up the local environment. Okay, that's what I want. Installing the CLI, I don't care about that. Okay, creating the workspace. ng new in my application, but I need the ng command, which is the CLI. So let's install it. npm install. I am in the macOS, so I just copy that. Let's go to a terminal. Paste and run. Okay, let's see if it installed. So let's try -- help. Yes, it's installed. Cool. Now I can create my project. New frontend. Would you like to add Angular routing? I will leave the default option. CSS, SCSS, yes. I will choose CSS, which is the easiest one and the one that I know. Okay, create all the files and install the default packages with Node. I see the source files, Angular JSON, package JSON, a usual file in a Node project, git ignore, so it already creates a Git project and some VS Code extensions. I don't care, I will open it with IntelliJ. That's the IDE I use. It creates an app folder, assets folder, inside the source folder, the icon, the index.html, and the default styles. Okay, I have the main TypeScript. I think TS stands for TypeScript. It finished. Let's go into the folder. As said, it's a Git project, the node modules folder where I have all the dependencies. Let's see the package JSON. Okay, some dependencies about Angular. I don't know those one. And the dev dependencies. About Karma, I think it's the testing framework. Jasmine, also the testing framework. I also have the Angular JSON. What's on there? It's the meta description of the project frontend. All is prefixed with app, okay. Where the files are located, the styles, okay. Some configuration and more, okay. Let's go in the source folder. Let's see the main TypeScript. Okay, no, I think it's time to open it with IntelliJ. It will be easier to read. Here it is. I will put in presentation mode to be easier to read in the screen. This is the README file. Okay, already generated by Angular. I ignore those directories. Let's see the main. Okay, Bootstrap module. Yes, it's just starting the application. The index.html, just a title, nothing more. Root app. In the assets, there is nothing. And in the app folder, the module. I didn't see that component before. ng module. Let's ignore it for now. And the component. So app-root component. Here it is, the HTML component with the title and the HTML. Oh, it's quite big. How do I start my application to see what's rendered? I've created my application. Okay, run the application, ng serve. Let's do it. Ng serve. I think the ---- open argument is to open the browser automatically. Compiled successfully, and I have it available here. Localhost 4200. Okay, I understand the HTML is quite big. Links to the Angular documentation, and I can create components right here. Angular material, okay, it's just the comments that are displayed. But where is the CSS for all of this? Is it all here? I have nothing. Oh, okay, it's all in the HTML file. Style, but I don't think it's best practice. If you have the CSS file, why don't you include it here instead of in the HTML? Okay, I don't care. Here's the rest until of Angular, the footer, yes. ng generate component, okay, that's what I saw before. I want to look deeply at those files, as I will delete them and use my own. So let's now generate my components. So here I can generate the components and add dependencies. I will need Bootstrap, so I can add Bootstrap right here. No, it's not editable. Run and watch, I don't care about this for now. Build, material, okay. As I already know the components I need, I can already create them. Let's go. I stop and add them. I have the main component, which contains the rest of the components, as done by Angular by default. Then I want the header. ng generate component header. Okay, it created a folder and inside the same 4 files. Let's create another one, buttons. And 3 more components for the 3 screens. The welcome message at the beginning, the login form, and the authentication content. The protected content, let's say. Okay, here are my components now. I think I'm pretty ready to start editing my project. I will start by removing all the content on the app component. I will leave the component definition. And I will only display the header. Let's pick the selector class. And let's see the render. Header works. Okay, fine. Let's go to the header, HTML, and edit this. Title, great. Do I have a logo? No. Let's pick a logo of Angular. Let's see, yes, a PNG with a transparent background. Okay, download it in the assets. Now include the image. How do I include the path? Maybe assets, PNG. Oh, yes, I think that's right. Let's add an alternative logo. And now some CSS to reduce the size. I won't add a lot of CSS, so I will only add them to the app component. Let's first add the name of the classes. Let's call it main header. Main logo. Main title. Let's go back to the CSS, main header, main logo, and main title. We'll start with the logo and pick a size. It's not taking effect. Let's move this to the header CSS file. Or is it this one? Okay, so the CSS is not inherited from the parent component to the child component. I have to put the CSS content in the component itself. Okay, no problem. Let's continue. Put a size to the title, a little bit smaller, and some background color in the header. All the text white because I don't see it otherwise, and align it in the center. Okay, seems fine. But what if I want the title to be dynamic and the logo to be dynamic? Let's go to the header and just define title title, and use it in the HTML. Let's see, maybe just something different. Yes, it's working. Great. Same for the logo. Where is it? Here. It's not the same, I think. No. How do I set variables in the HTML? Let's go back to the where I saw it before. Let's go back to the template, I think. The main example has everything. Okay, I have to define this way with the square brackets. So, square brackets here and remove that. Yeah, it works. Okay, but what if I want to define here the title, front-end project, and the logo path? Angular PNG. This doesn't work, but how do I pass parameters to an inner component? Angular pass parameters to component. Pass variable to custom passing data into a component. Maybe in the documentation, in the Angular documentation, I have something. Developer guide. Oh, it's too deep. Just understanding the components. Sharing data between child and parent. That's exactly what I want. Let's see. Input and output give a child component a way to communicate with its parent component. That's what I want. So the input sends from the parent to the child. Yes, that's it. Configure the child component to use the input decorator in a child component class. First import input. Here, input item. Decorate the property with input. Okay, let's do this first. Let's go to the child component, which is the header TypeScript. So as this is the variable, I put input. Same for the logo path, and import them. And now how do I use from the parent? Configuring the parent component. Oh, okay. Use the child's selector. Here is app detail. This is the name of the variable item, and this is the name of the value of the variable. So let's remove this. Go to parent component and use the square brackets. Let's see the result. No, something is going wrong. It occurs in the template. In the HTML, the title is not good. Okay, let's read the error unexpected token frontend at column 5 in the component HTML. That's the component HTML, app component HTML, column 5. But why frontend? Frontend is in the middle. Okay, I think, as I said before, in the string it's the name of the variables. So this is considered a variable, not a string. I have to transform this from a variable to a string. Angular pass string value to input. How to pass a string value to a component in Angular? Angular 2 maybe. String. Okay, I'm using this one, the square brackets. So I have double quotes and single quotes. Let's use all of this. Yeah, now it works. So, oh, this is really strange because you have to indicate both quotes, the double and the single quote. Okay, that's the way it works. I have the header now. I can create more components. Let's see the one I have. Let's create the welcome content component. I will first include it in the main component. Up, close everything. I go to the HTML. I go to the TypeScript and pick the selector. So I think everything is prefixed by app. I saw that in the Angular JSON, I think. Prefix app, okay. I can change it if I want. So let's go to the HTML and include the welcome message. Here it is. Let's add more content. Let's go to the welcome HTML. I won't need any variable this time. Welcome your journey Angular. Okay, and now I will add some Bootstrap classes to make this prettier and easy. How do I add Bootstrap to my Angular project? Angular add dependency, npm dependencies. Let's scroll down, dependencies. Okay, Angular package. To add a new dependency, use ng-add command. Let's go to the terminal. I will leave this tab open and running, and from another tab, ng-add bootstrap. The package will be installed. Yes, proceed. Bootstrap was found but does not support schematics. Hope this won't cause any problem. Let's go back to the project. I will just start by adding display 4 and see the content. Filter, no, nothing was applied. Network, if I reload everything, it's not downloading Bootstrap. So how do I include Bootstrap in my project? Angular include Bootstrap. How to add Bootstrap to an Angular application? Yes, this seems what I want. Okay, Angular Bootstrap. I've added the other one. Maybe, oh, styles include the Bootstrap. That was in the Angular JSON file. Let's go again, Angular JSON, the styles. Okay, so here I add my node modules. What's the path? Node modules, Bootstrap, and the SCSS. Here it is. Copy path. This one. Okay, let's refresh. Nothing changed. Maybe I need to restart my project as I changed the Angular JSON. Let's do this. Okay. Yeah, this time it's loaded. Now I have the display 4 with all the content. So let's go back to the welcome content HTML and add more Bootstrap classes. I just want to center the welcome message in the middle of the screen. This is better than before. Okay, let's create another component. I have the welcome message. I have the buttons. I want those three components to be displayed in a component where I switch between them. So I will create another component which wrap all those three. Generate component content. From the app component, I only add the content component. And here I add the app header. What was the name? Welcome content. Welcome content component. The result is the same, but now from the content component I can switch between the welcome message, the login form, and the protected content. Let's first create the buttons to display the login form from the welcome message. I will first display them. App buttons. Here it is, unedited. Button. Login button. Okay, a login button shows the login form, and a logout button to show the welcome message again. Let's wrap all of this in a row. Until now I've used the Bootstrap classes already defined, but if I want to add style directly in the HTML content, maybe it's working this way. Yes, it works. And now let's put some color to the buttons. Better. Tone dark. Let's separate them a little bit. Great. But those buttons are not linked to any action. So let's try to bind those buttons to an action. As I saw before in the documentation, I had the parentheses. What is Angular templates? Maybe, yes, the click. Here it is. Let's first create the click events at login. At logout. And this goes to methods in the TypeScript file. At login, at logout. Okay, this is binded to the methods, but I want to bind to a parent component. Maybe what I can do is bind a method from the parent component. Let's move this to the parent component. Let's test it. I go to the content, TypeScript, and put them here. And when calling the buttons, where do I call the buttons? No, let's move the buttons to the content component. It should be the same. No, at login it's not defined. That's normal. Here I bind the inputs. Let's create some inputs. Input, login event, login click. Don't know, nothing. Input, logout, click. Import the input and use this in the content. How do I pass the parameters? How was that? How did I with the header component? Okay, square brackets. Square log. No. Logging. Click. At logging. Square logging. Logout. Click. At logout. No, it doesn't work because I'm calling in the buttons the wrong method. The buttons HTML, maybe just this way. No, because I can't store a method in an input. How do I call a method, a parent method from a component? Let's search at Google. Grr parent method from component. Call parent method from a child component. Seems to be that. Let's see the response. Output. Okay, I can't use the method reference as I thought, but I can use the output. Let's see in the documentation how the output works. Where was that in sharing data between? Where is the output? Output. Okay, sending child. This one. Sending child to a parent component. From the child to the parent. Okay, yes. That's what I'm looking for. The output decorator in a child component or directive lets data flow from the child to the parent. Let's see the example. I have event emitter. Okay, output, but I don't want to emit a string. Let's test it. I remove this one to avoid the errors. So I go to the buttons TypeScript and change from input to output and event emitter. Okay, and how do I use it in the parent template with the parentheses? Oh, what's event? The event contains the data that the user types into the input. I don't have an input, I have a button, so I have no user input, but that's the syntax. Let's go to the content component. I use the parentheses. At login, at logout. From now it works. Let's go to the content TypeScript. Component to show. It's the welcome message. At logging, this component to show, I use the login form. And at logout, I turn back to the welcome component. There is no logic with this variable, but I already have the methods. So now, how do I switch from one component to the other? Let's go to the HTML. I have the welcome message. Let's add the login form component. And now I think I can use the if condition inside to display this component or this component. Let's see if I find an example at the Angular documentation. Maybe in the templates, ngIf, nothing, directives, built-in directives, if, yes. Adding or removing an element with ngIf. So, star ngIf for both. Component to show directly the name of the variable is equal to single quote to use a string, welcome, or logging. Let's see the result. Logging. It's not working. Is there any error in the console? No. Let's add some logs to see the behavior. Can I reach this method? Console log, show logging, show welcome. Okay, nothing is shown, which means that the methods at login, at logout aren't being called. Let's go to the buttons. Login click, logout click. Oh, I remember. At the HTML, I have no binding. How do I bind an output directive? Let's go back to the components, sharing data, output, sending data from the child to the parent, configuring the child component, the child template. Okay, this is it. So I have the click event equals the method, and this is the output, emit. Can I call directly this one? Let's try. I go to the TypeScript, pick the name, emit. Yes, it works. So, same for the logout. Login, logout. So now I have a conditional display, the login form, or the welcome message, depending on a variable. I've binded the events, the click, to the parent, so I can send data from the parent to the child, as done for the title, and now from the child to the parent, as done for the click event. Let's continue creating the real login form. To create a login form, I will go to Bootstrap. I will go to the Bootstrap website and find a beautiful login form. Okay, let's pick the basic example. I will leave the TypeScript empty for now and just edit the HTML. Copy all the content and let's see the result. Seems fine. Let's just wrap this into a row. And now give some fixed width. Great, I think it's okay. Let's remove all what's unnecessary. I just leave the email, just rename it to login or username. Okay, leave the submit button and remove the registration. Okay, fine. Now let's bind the click on this button to send a request. For now, I will just log the content of the username and password. So I have to bind the button click or the form submit action to a method, as I did with those buttons. Let's see what I've done. Just click and emit. I don't want an output, because with the buttons, the logic was not in the buttons component, but in the content component. But this time, I want the logic to remain in the login component. And how do I read the values of the username and password? Let's create some variables. Now how do I write the content of the input inside the variable? Let's check the Angular documentation. Maybe in the templates, bindings, two ways binding. I think it's two ways binding because I want to display the value of the username and I want to save back the value of the username. Okay, the parentheses are for the input and the square brackets are for the output. So I assign a two-way binding with these symbols. Here I will put the variable name, but what do I put in the left side? Let's continue. No. There's no input. Maybe another section. Forms in the developer guide. Choosing an approach, reactive forms. Let's scroll until I have an example. Data flow in forms. When an application contains a form, Angular must keep the view in sync with the component model and component model in sync with the view. Yes, that's what I want. I think I'm in the correct place. Let's continue. I want a written example. Okay, this was the introduction. Let's go to the next section. Adding a basic form control, okay. 3 steps. Register the reactive form module in your application, generate a new component, and register the form control. Okay, here I have the form control in the input, which is bind to a name. Name is the variable. So let's test this one. First step, register the reactive form modules. I must import this module in the ng modules. That's a file I've seen at the beginning, but I skip it. Here it is. So here I have to add this import. And use it in the import of the engine modules. Here it is. Now use the CLI to generate a new component. I already have it. Let's go to the login form, but instead of a string, I have a form control. Let's import the form control. Use the constructor of form control to set its initial value. I want it empty. Just leave it. I forget the new. And the same for the password. And now in the HTML, I add to the input the square brackets from control with the name of the variable. His name and password. Let's see if it accepts that. Okay, seems fine. I can test it for now. Let's put something in the method of the submit. Let's open the debug console. Seems not to be working. I will restart the application as I did some changes in the main module of Angular. Nothing changed. No error. I'm doing something wrong, I think. Let's display the value this way. Okay, but it reads, but I'm unable to catch this in the submit login method. Maybe the binding is incorrect. Let's continue reading the documentation. Let's come back to the reactive forms and see if I have the submit keyword. Save the form data. Okay. ng submit. Okay. Let's test again. Nothing. Let's continue reading the documentation. Okay, in this example, I have a more complete form, as I have a form group with 2 inputs. That's similar with what I have. Let's test it. Let's come back to the TypeScript. Instead of form controls, I will create a profile form group, and inside both variables. Let's import this one, and in the HTML form group profile form, this time is form control name, form control name. I don't know the difference between one example and the other. Let's add again the ng submit. What was the name of the method? Submit logging. And let's test again. Okay, now it's a big problem. Let's come back and compare with the example in the documentation. That's 2 points and not an equal sign. Username value isn't accepted because now I have this profile form and I forgot the value at the end. Let's remove this, as I already validated this behavior. Username is not accepted, so remove it. Nothing is happening. Okay, the submit event is not binded. Let's see in Google what I can find. Submit event not bind. See the answer. That's exactly what I have. ng submit. Event not working in Angular. Let's see the answer. Exactly what I have. Some code, button submit. Oh, I have type button. I have to read carefully what I copy from Bootstrap. Let's test it now. Yes, it works. Okay, but here I have the group object. I want each fields individually. What can I do with this group? Can I access all the values? Let's see in Google. Angular form group access individual values. So to get a single value from the form group. Control and name. Okay, let's put a breakpoint and see what I can do. If I go to the source, let's check the TypeScript file. No, not the header. Source app. Here it is, login form. with TypeScript. Oh, I have a warning. Why? Let's test this. Okay, stopped. Now I can just watch the value. This profile form and access this way. Username undefined. Password undefined. Okay. Controls. Better value of the password is pass. Cool. The username, it's user. Okay, I got it. Let's come back to the TypeScript and use this way. Controls. Username. Remove the breakpoint. Let's continue the execution. Okay. Now I have the login form. I can read both fields and submit the values. What I do with those values, I will send them to my backend. To send any information, I will use Axios to communicate with backend. So, as did before, I will add a new dependency. I will stop the application, add Axios. Yes, install this version. I had the same error before with Bootstrap, but everything seems to work, so I will ignore it. Now, coming back to the Angular documentation, I think I have something useful, the dependency injection. I will create a service which manages all the Axios requests. This way I don't need to handle the Axios syntax in all the components. How do I create a service? How do I inject a service everywhere? Dependency injection, no. Creating an injectable service. Okay, that's what I want. Creating an injectable service, ng generate service. Okay, let's do this. Ng generate service Axios. Done. Let's see the result. Here it is. What does it look like? Injectable, provided in root. I don't know, maybe it's the scope of the service and a default constructor. The injectable decorator specifies that Angular can use this class in the dependency injection system. The metadata provided in means that the hero service is visible throughout the application. Okay, injecting the service. Now that I have the service, I can create a method which is request with the URL method and params. How do I use Axios? Import Axios from Axios. Maybe it works. And I will configure in the constructor the default URL. Choose default base URL, localhost 8080 HTTP, and some content type. Defaults. For the post data, I want the content type to be by default JSON, because I always send JSON data. Application JSON. Okay, and now Axios request method URL and the data params. Let's rename this. Okay, now I must inject this service in other services. As I saw in the getting started section, just using it in the constructor is enough. Let's try it. Let's go to the login form. I will create the constructor Axios service no setter and import it. From Axios service, and on the logging Axios service request the first parameter was which one? The method, the URL, the method post, the URL login, and the data. Dictionary, username, password. Let's use this value, the username, and in the password. And I removed the warning. Let's see the result. Cannot get. What's this? Console, fail to load resources. Let's go to the terminal if I have some errors. This type does not have a value, so it cannot be used as injection. Maybe I'm missing the syntax. Let's see the documentation, what they say. Let's come back to the initial getting started, where I saw the dependency injection example. Okay, logger.service. What is the name? Axios.service. I used the wrong name. I named the class instead of the file. Let's start again. Again the error. I will restart the server just in case of. No. So I scroll up to the first error. Property post does not exist on the type omit Axios defaults any. Oh, because it's defaults header. Defaults headers. Still bad. It's another error. Yes, parameter URL implicitly has an any type. Let's copy this error, as I don't know what this means. After investigating a little bit and asking to friends which has some experience, they said that every argument, every variable and method must be typed. So I must say that this variable is a string. This variable is a string and this one is a document, so any type of data. The method returns void for the moment. Let's go to the other classes, to the other TypeScript classes and do the same. Okay, another error. Cannot find the name Axios service because I missed the this. Let's go back to the login TypeScript and I have to use the this because it belongs to the class. That was the last error. Property Axios service does not exist on type login form component. Why? It's not injected. Okay, this problem took me a little bit more time because it was a simple syntax problem. If I go to the documentation, in the dependency injection example, I can see that the injection is made in the constructor, but with the private keyword. If I just add the private keyword, everything works fine. I don't know why you need to have this visibility keyword, but that's the way Angular works. Let's test this. I open the inspect module at the network and see if it sends something to my backend. Nothing, but I have errors. Let's see them. Uncaught in promise, failed to execute open on login. Is not a valid HTTP method. Oh, I think I've missed the order of the parameters. The first is the method, then the URL. Let's see if it's correct. The first is the method, then URL. Okay. Let's test the login endpoint. Username and password and send. I have the pre-flight, the option request which was sent, and the login request which was sent, the post, with the payload, sir, and the response I got the first name, the last name, the login, and the token, the JWT token. Great, I have now to store this JWT in the local storage. This way I can use the JWT for any other request I will use to query another endpoint which is protected. So let's first get the response of the Axios request and store it to the local storage. So in the Axios service I will return the promise of any. And now in the login form, once requested, then the response. How do I use the local storage in Angular? Let's see it in Google. Store in the local storage, working with Angular local storage. Maybe this link. Let's see the code quickly. Local storage. Do I have to import something? Let's test it directly. Local storage, set item, auth token, response, data token. Let's see if it works. Doesn't seem to work because of the semicolon and the syntax error. Now it's okay. Let's reduce this. Login. Okay, I have the login again. And let's see in the application if I have, yes, I've stored correctly the auth token as done here. Let's now go to the content component, the one which I didn't use yet. This one. And here I will request another endpoint from my backend and using the JWT in the header. Let's first move all the logic to store the JWT in the local storage to the Axios service. This way I have all the local storage actions directly in the Axios service. Token, which is a string, and returns void. Let's go back and clean this. Now I will use the token in the headers if it's present. I declare a header variable empty. Let's define it as any. Get token returns a string or a null. Because if I have no token, it will return null value. Local storage get item return if this get token equals to null. No, different to null. Headers authorization bearer token plus this one and send the headers over there. Okay, the Axios service seems pretty fine. Let's go now to the protected content component. Protected content, I have nothing. What I will do is when the component finishes to render, just before finish the render, I want to request my backend. I remember seeing something about the component lifecycle. Components lifecycle. Okay. Lifecycle event sequence. Okay. On changed, on init, do check, after content init, after content checked, after view init. Oh, there's a lot of them. Let's pick the first one and see. Let's pick this one and see if it works. ng on init. Void. And as before, I import the Axios service. What was the syntax? Let's pick it from the login component. And the constructor too. Okay, now Axios service request first the method, which is get the URL messages and empty data. Let's test this. Login, nothing happens, normal, because I have no action after the signing, just storing the token. So let's display by default this component. I do this in the content component. In the HTML, I will comment all of this. App protected content. Protected content, great. What is the network? Messages. And I have the header a get to messages with the authorization bearer and the token. This is the token present in the local storage. And the response first. And second is the list of strings coming from a backend. So I will display this in a box. Let's use Bootstrap to find a pretty box. Cards. Okay. I think this one can do the work. Without the image, just the card title and the list of the items, without the button. So let's copy all of this. And I go to the protected content component. To the HTML, this one. Replace everything. I remove the image. I remove the button. Better. Backend content, and here I let this by default, but as I receive a list, I want to display also a list dynamically into a for loop. Let's first save the result into a variable for this component. So when I receive the response, then response. Let's create a variable, data, which is an array, empty. So with the response, this data equal response data. And now in the HTML, I will display this in a for loop. Let's see the for loop for Angular. Component interaction maybe, because I'm interactive with the variables from the component to the template. Okay, ng4. This seems to be what I'm looking for. ng4 let hero of hero. Okay, I have the complete syntax into a single string. I don't like that, but that's the way Angular works. So let's go back to the HTML. protected content HTML, and instead of a paragraph, I will create an unlimited list, and inside the list items. So ng4 let item of data, and here item. Let's try this. First and second. Okay, cool. I can remove this paragraph and the component is ready. Maybe just center it. Justify content in the center and a fixed size. Okay, let's now handle the logic to display the welcome message component, the login form, and the protected content component. All of this is managed in the content component. And I display this only if it's messages. Let's go to the TypeScript file and we'll add another one at login successful void messages. And this one will be called by a successfully login. So how do I use that? I will use an event emitter in the login form and call this method if the login is successful. Let's go to the login component. I have the output login successful new event emitter. Import output and event emitter. So when the login is successful, I will call the emitter. This emitter emit. Now I have to bind this output to the method of the content component. This is done in the content component HTML. I bind the event with the method, and the method is at login successful. Let's try this. It seems to work, and if I click to log out, I'm back again. So I have now my frontend ready. I can add some more logic as the registration form, and at the logout delete the token from the local storage. But I think I've already mastered some of the basic concepts from Angular. It took me 6 hours to build this application with Angular, with absolutely no previous experience in Angular. As said at the beginning, I must first focus on a goal, then try to map my current knowledge from other languages to Angular. It's easier to map existing knowledge than try to understand new concepts. I hope you learned something about Angular, as I did. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, click on the like button, and see you soon. Bye!